How many times have you seen someone do a mini band lateral walk to help target their glutes? What if I told you that regardless if the goal is to rehab your hips, your back, your knees, or for better glute activation or warm up, there are a lot better options than taking one of these and wrapping it around your knees and walking from side to side. Now, the glute med is indeed a very important muscle, but once you understand its function at a basic level, you're gonna realize quickly that that exercise isn't really getting the job done. Many people just look at the glute med and say, this is a muscle of hip abduction, so it does this joint action. And that's true to a certain extent, but in the context of how we actually move as humans, it has a lot more important functions than just simply abduction in isolation. The glute med has two main divisions of muscle fibers. The first are on the front side of the pelvis, and these create more internal rotation of the hip. The backside fibers create more external rotation and abduction. Now, it's important to consider how this is actually being used as we move through the gait cycle. Internal rotation is being used when we enter mid-stance phase of gait, meaning that the foot is fully flat on the ground, the other leg is off of the ground, and we are in a position of our foot where the arch is lowering to the ground. So it makes sense that if I wanted to target my glute med, specifically my front fibers, I would probably want to do it in a position of hip internal rotation and eventually progress that to the point where I am internally rotating my hip and pronating my foot for maximal specificity and benefit. The back fibers of my glute med that create external rotation are used more so when we start to push away from that side. So once we start to enter what we call late stance, that is a position of more external rotation and some, but not a ton, of abduction of the hip. And that is where those fibers are being used the most. So it makes sense to use them when we are in a position where we're more on the front of our foot and we are in more of a hip extended position. As we move through the gait cycle, we move from early stance on the outside of our heel to more of late stance, which is pushing off right here. So we transition from here to the foot flattening out, moving into a pronated position, into that push off like this. The problem with mini band side steps is that they don't necessarily appreciate that. They're mostly encouraging us to stay on the outside of our foot. And the way I've seen them done over and over and over again and coached over and over and over again is that people stay on the outside of our foot. But that's not when the glute med works at all. There's no specificity there. So we want to train the foot to work with the hip. Now, if I wanted to target my glute med more in a specific context, I could attach a band to a rack somewhere around the level of my knee, and this band would be pulling me out. So I reflexively have to keep my knee in and the pressures of my inner heel and the base of my big toe without fully losing my outside foot. I want to feel that flat too, but my bias is in that inner arch. And then I like to start in the bottom position of the split squat so I know that my back knee is going to be underneath my back hip. And you can just hold on to something too, just to give yourself some stability like this. Just make sure whatever you're holding on to isn't causing you to like twist or turn away from that side. The band is just around the top of that knee there. So staying tall, and then just get an exhale to feel your rib cage come down. Stack your head over your pelvis and your rib cage over your pelvis. Go ahead and then just go up into the top of the split squat and make sure you're feeling those foot contacts. And then maintain that as you go down and up. You're gonna be feeling that glute med work with the inner thigh adductor muscle, which is good. Those muscles should work together, and you can really start to feel them integrating, which is great. If I wanted to bias the backside fibers of my glute med, then I would do the opposite. I'd have the band around the outside of the knee, pulling it in, so I reflexively have to keep it out. Remember, the knees stay over the toes regardless of whether the band is on the outside or the inside. So what I would want to do here is just simply, again, start in the bottom position, but push your knee just a little bit further forward. So that way, a little bit more weight is on your big toe and your pelvis is turning away from that side a little bit to mimic that later stance position when you're turning away from that side. And then just maintain that as you go down and up, making sure that you're getting your knee to go over your toe and keeping your zipper very slightly turned away from that side. And you'll feel this right here working, making sure that you're keeping your ribs and head stacked over your pelvis, eyes straight ahead. So really you're just focused on a little bit more of your forefoot without your heel, your inner heel, lifting off of the ground, or your big toe. It's just a slightly different bias and intention of where your weight is. If this made sense to you, don't forget to smash that like button and also leave a comment below on how it felt. Now you're probably wondering, well, Connor, do I need to bias more internal or external rotation of my glute med fibers? And the answer would depend on you as an individual. Some people need more internal rotation fibers on both sides, and some people need more internal rotation fibers on one side, more external on the other. If you want to learn more about what you specifically might need, check out my lateral pelvic tilt video that can give you some deep dive assessments and also some information that will give you a much clearer picture what you need to do for your own needs. Another great way you can improve your hip internal rotation is check out my beginner body restoration program, which is designed to help loosen up some range of motion and movement options and then integrate that with muscles that take into account the gait cycle, just like we're doing in this video.